Good morning, students. In today's class, I will explain how we can define the member functions of a class outside the class and also the concept of array of objects. In our last class, we studied several examples of objects and classes such as date class, time class, triangle class, complex number class, etc. And we also studied how object oriented programming can be implemented using C++. In today's class, we will be learning about how we can define the member functions of a class outside the class, how array of objects can be created in C++, and we are learning these two major concepts using several illustrative programs. At the end of today's session, you will be in a position to define a member function outside the class, and also you will be in a position to understand the concept of array of objects in C++. We know that every class includes certain data called member data and also certain function which can operate or which can access the member data called member function. Generally, member data and member function, we refer to them as members of a class. In our last class, we studied several examples of objects and classes where the member functions of a class are defined inside the class. In today's class, we will be learning about how the same member function can be defined outside the class. In general, any member function in C++ can be defined in two different ways. They may be defined either inside the class or may be defined outside the class. In all the examples that we have studied so far, we defined all the member function completely within the class. When a member function is defined inside the class, then there is no need to write the prototype. On the other hand, when we are defining the member function outside the class, what we have to do is inside the class, you just write the prototype of the member function. Don't define the function. Whereas the actual definition of the function, we have to write it outside the class. In generally, when you are defining a member function outside the class, the general syntax is first write the return type, then write the class to which the member function belongs, scope resolution operator, then you write the function name, then within the parameter parentheses, you declare the argument, then open the brace, then write the content of the function, write the body of the function, then you close the function. I will explain the concept of defining a member function outside the class with some simple example. But the example we have considered for objects and classes are already covered in our last class. Let us start with the first example. Create a class complex with real and image as member data. Here the class name is complex and the member data of this classes are real and image. And use public function read complex and write complex. The purpose of read complex is to input the value for real and image. And the purpose of write complex is to display the complex number in the complex number format of a plus ib. But the content, the actual statement for these two functions, we already studied in our last class. Next, class complex. Then under the private column or under the private access specifier, you declare the member data, float real comma image. Then you can observe under the public access specifier, you write only the prototype of the function. The first function is read complex, where the return type is void and no argument. So the function belongs to the category of function without argument and without return value. And the second member function is void write complex, means that function name is write complex. That function also belongs to the category of function without argument and without return value. So now we can see inside the class, I have just mentioned the prototype. Actual statement of that function I have not written inside the class. Then you close the class by closing the brace and semicolon. Now the class definition is over. Now what happens is inside the class, I have just given the prototype. Now we have to define those two functions one by one. The first function is read complex. What's the general syntax? First you write the return type, then the class name, scope resolution operator, function name, argument list. So here the return type is void. The class to which the read complex belongs is complex scope resolution operator. Then the function name read complex. Since the function has no argument, just open the parenthesis and close it. Then open the brace. Within the two, within the open brace and the closing brace, you write the statement of the function. The purpose of read complex function, we know that is to input the value for real and image. See out, enter the real and imaginary part, see in real and image. Next. Second function, again, the return type is void. Class to which write complex belong is complex. Scope resolution operator. Write complex. Open the parenthesis, close it. Open the brace. We know that the purpose of write complex function is to display the complex number in complex number format. So first display real part, within the double quotes write plus mark, then image, then within the double quote write the I, then the end line, close the function. Now we have defined two functions, read complex and write complex, outside the class. So when you are defining a read complex function and write complex function outside the class, after closing of the corresponding function, that's the end. No need to put once again close the class, because the class is already closed here. Already closed here with a semicolon and a brace. Now we create the object and call the member functions one by one. Void main complex C1 comma C2. So here C1 and C2 are considered as objects of which class? Complex class. Now you can call the member function either read complex function or write complex function with any objects you like. See how? Enter first complex number. So here we have to input the values of real and imaginary for first complex number. Means you have to call the read complex function with C1 object. C1 dot read complex. Same thing you repeat it for second complex number. See out, enter the second complex number. Call the read complex function with C2 object. Now we have inputted two different complex number. You display them one by one. To display them, you have to call the write complex function with both C1 and C2. So see out, the first complex number is C1 dot write complex. Then enter the second complex number is C2 dot write complex, code the function. Hope you understood how we can define a member function outside the class. In order to define a member function outside the class, first you have to close the class. Then you start with the return type of the function, class name, scope resolution operator, function name, argument list, then open the brace, then you write the content of the function, close the function. This is the syntax. So the idea will be much more clear when we consider some more example. Create a class triangle with base, height, and area as member data. Use public function read to read the value for base and height. Calculate to calculate the area of the triangle, and display function to display the area of the triangle. The same example we have considered in my last class also, where all the member functions are defined inside the class. The only difference is now we are defining the member function outside the class. Class triangle under the private access specifier declares the member data, float base comma height comma area. Then you write the prototype of all the three function, public, void read mean, read function, calculate function, display function. All these three function belongs to the category of function without argument, without return value. No return value means void. Then function name within the parenthesis, open the parenthesis, close it, semicolon, semicolon, semicolon. Then what happens is, then you have to close the class. One semicolon is missing here for the closing part of the class. Then we have to define the function one by one. The first function is read. The return type is void. The class it belongs is triangle. Scope resolution read. Open the brace. The purpose of read function is to input the value for base and height. So see out, enter the base and height. See in base height. Second function. Return type is void. Class to which calculate function belongs is triangle. Scope resolution. Then the function name calculate. The purpose of calculate function is to calculate the area of the triangle. Therefore, area equal to half into base into height. Half means 0.5 into base into height. Close the second function. Then we start the third function. Return type is void. Class to which display function belongs is triangle. Scope resolution operator. Display. Open the parenthesis, close it. Then open this one. The purpose of display function is to display the area of the triangle. So area of the triangle equal to area end line. Now all the three functions have been defined one by one. Then you create the object and call the member function. Void main triangle T. So here the class name is triangle. T is an object. Then what happens is we can call the either read function, calculate function, or display function with T. T dot read mean there you are inputting the value for real and you are inputting the value for base and height. T dot calculate, that function calculates the value for area. Then T dot display mean that function display the value of the area of the triangle. Now, in C++, we can copy the content of one object directly to another object. So, for example, C1 is an object mean, then if you use the function C1 dot read complex mean, then real and image value will be read for C1 object. As it is, we can copy that one to another object called C2 by using the normal assignment statement C2 equal to C1. So, in C++, one object can be assigned to another provided both the object must belongs to the same class. You cannot copy the object of triangle class to complex class. By default, whenever one object is assigned to another object, a bitwise copy of the data members are made. That means first data member of the first object is copied into the same first data member of the second object. Similarly, the second data member value is copied into second member. Like that. So the values of the different members of the first object is one by one is copied into the corresponding members of the second object. I will illustrate. It's a simple example. Class complex, private float real comma image, public void read complex, void write complex. So the prototype, I mentioned it inside the class. Now we have to define these two functions outside the class by after closing the class. Void return type, class to which the function belongs is complex, scope resolution, read complex. Here, enter the value for real and imaginary part, see in real image. The purpose already know because in all the three examples I have given the same thing. Void complex, write complex, see out, real plus mark, image, endline. Now what happens is we have defined the class, we have written the prototype of the member function, we have defined all the two member function outside the class. Now what happens is we have to create an object inside the main function. Void main complex C1 comma C2. So C1, C2 are the objects of complex class. C1 dot read complex. Now we are calling the read complex function with C1 object. Naturally, what happens is you will input the value for real and image of the first complex number. So straight away I can take C2 equal to C1 means as it is the real part of the first number is copied into real part of the second complex number. The imaginary part of the first complex number is copied into imaginary part of the second complex number. Now you reckon what happens is the complete content of the first object is copied into second object. Now you can call the write complex function with objects one by one. C1 dot write complex, then C2 dot write complex. Then what happens is the same values of the real and imaginary part of first complex number is copied into second complex number also. That we can verify by calling the write complex function with C1 and C2. Your output will be one and the same. Another concept in C++ is array of the object. What is an array? Array is a group of logically related data items of same type. If the array of integer means all the element will be of integer type. Array of float means all the element will be float type. Just similar to that one, array of object means it's an array where each element is an object of a same class. If we declare an array of complex class means every element will be an object of which class? Complex class. Let us take one simple example illustrating the concept. Class cricket, the class name is cricket, private, char name 20. So first member data is name of the cricketer, int runs, number of runs scored. So this class has two member data, name and runs. Next, public, void read, void display. So we have just mentioned the prototype inside the class. The first function, no argument, no return value. Second function is also no argument, no return value, close the class. Now we have to define the two functions read and display outside the class. Void class to which the function belongs, cricket, scope resolution, read. Then the purpose of read function is to display the value for, input the value for name and runs. See in name runs. One member function is defined outside the class. Then take the second one. Void, again class name is cricket, display. First see out, one tab, and the number of runs scored. So what happens is it? So here you're displaying the value of name of the cricketer and the number of runs scored with a tab, with a spacing of 5 space between them. Then close the function. Now we have defined both the member function outside the class. Next, you cricket, void main, cricket, C of 10. Then what happens is, it's an array of how many elements? 10 elements, where each element is what? Object of which class? Cricket class. C0 is first object, C1 is second object, like that. C of 9 is the ninth object. So altogether we have 10 different objects. Then int n. So out of 10, we can use any number. So int n means that specifies the number of objects, enter the number of players. Suppose if you are giving n equal to 3 mean, then you are creating 3 objects. For int I equal to 0, I less than or equal to n minus 1, I plus player. Call the read function, c of I dot read. So first you call the read function with c0, then with c1, then with c2, and so on. If the number of elements are 10 mean, then you're calling the read function with c0, c1, c2, c3, c4 up to c9. The same thing, you call the write display function also. So details of the n cricketers are for I equal to 0, I less than or equal to n minus 1. Call the same display function with c of I, it's a square bracket, dot display the member function. So this is how a array of object is created and how we can call the member function with every object. When there are many objects, then what happens is we make use of the for loop as shown it here. So in today's class, I covered 3 major components. One is defining member function outside the class, array of object, and copy one object to or assigning one object to another object. Illustrate with an example. How do you define member function outside the class? Illustrate with an example, array of objects in C++. This third one, you can take it as an assignment. And you can try on your own. Create a class date with dd, mm, and yy as member data. Just already given the example. Use public function read date to read the given date, write date to display the date. You do one thing here. Here, you try to write the read date function inside the class and write date function outside the class. If your class has many functions, there is no rule that all the member functions should be defined inside the class or all the member functions should be defined outside the class. Any member function can be defined inside the class. Any member function, you can define it outside the class also. That is, the flexibility is given to the programmer. There is no hard cut rule. Let us revise what we have studied with some simple review multiple choice question. Dash operator is used to define a member function outside the class. I have given several examples. When you are defining a member function outside the class, you have to make use of scope resolution operator. The correct answer is C. Correct sequence for defining member function outside the class. What sequence? Return type, class name, scope resolution, function name, and argument. So the correct answer is B. In an array of objects, each element is a class, object, basic type, none of these. It's an array of object, as the name indicates. An array of object is an array where each element is an object. The correct answer is B. Member function in C++ must be declared inside the class, declared outside the class, either inside or outside, none of these. Already I told, member function can be defined either inside or outside. Some can be defined inside and some function can be defined outside. If you want, you can define all the function inside, or if you want, you can define all the classes outside, all the function outside. There is no rule. The correct answer is either inside or outside, C. While defining a member function outside the class, dash must be mentioned within the class. Only prototype should be given inside the class. The correct answer is D, function prototype. Hope we understood the concept of array of object, assigning one object to another object, and also how we can define a member function of a class inside, outside the classes. So generally what we'll do is, when the body of the function of a many class is more, or if more number of statements are included in the body of the function, the better technique is to define the function outside the class. For small function, you can define it inside the classes. With this, I will stop today's class. Thank you.